Good afternoon. Rich Nass with Open Systems Media here for our weekly spot with our special guest, Ray Zinn. Good afternoon, Ray. How are you?
Well, I'm doing just fine, Rich. How are you doing out there in New Jersey?
Doing just fine. Thank you very much. It's a little hot, but it goes with the territory. Okay.
Well, this time of year, of course, it's going to be warm.
Absolutely. Okay, so speaking of hot and warm, here's a good subject that I don't think we've tackled yet. And I'm sure you've come across this many times. What's the best way to fire somebody, A, who deserves to be fired, and B, somebody who really doesn't deserve to be fired but either gets caught up in a wave of other people or is being fired for cost-cutting measures or something like that? So let's tackle the easy one first. What's the best way to fire somebody who deserves to be fired?
Well, actually, I may think that's the tougher one because you're angry, you're upset generally when somebody deserves to be terminated. And it's not easy when that situation occurs to be always in the most pleasant and affable way. And oftentimes we kind of let our frustrations out and tell them in a way in which is not kind and gentle. No one, in my mind, deserves to be treated bad. Even having said that, when my parents would give me a whooping, as you would, they say, "This is for your good," as you would, and as they give me my little spanking. So, I think we can be kind. We can be upfront with that person by telling them why we're letting them go, and we had this happen not too long before I sold the company. We had to let an individual go for doing some things which were inappropriate, and yet, rather than being nasty about it, we just told them this is not in accordance with company policy, and that we warned them and we've given them notice about their doing this sort of thing, and they chose to ignore it, and so we couldn't ignore it for the good of the whole company, and so we're now letting you go. And now there's many, many reasons why people are terminated, and for cause, as you would, but I think in all cases we can do it in a humane and kindly way, even if the person has done some things which are inappropriate. So my view is that no matter what the situation is, you can still do it in a dignified way.
Okay, fair enough. Now, let's move on to the one that I said was harder. How do you fire somebody, or not how, but what's the best way to fire somebody who's a really good worker, who does not deserve the axe?
Because you treat them, letting them know the reason for the layoff or the RIF, and you make sure that you have given them all the consideration with regard to the severance and carrying on their medical as long as you can. This is the one where you can be gentle and you can be good by being fair with them. They did join the company with the thought that they were going to be there for a long time, and because of business reasons or cost cutting, you've had to do this layoff. But you need to be fair with them, and I know that sometimes hurts the company, and it's difficult to really lay out those costs to do the severance. But the best thing to do is to make sure you're fair when you do the cutback, and give them as much leeway as possible with regard to their benefits, their medical primarily, and make sure that they have a good taste in their mouth vis-a-vis them being terminated due to cost-cutting reasons.
But is it possible for them to have a good taste in their mouth? I mean, most people are extremely bitter when push comes to shove.
That's because we don't treat them right. We don't explain to them, that we generally give notice in advance of having to do a layoff that we're going to have to cut back, and we give much consideration to the the way we formulate the termination. I would say that in maybe the 4 or 5 times over the 37 years that I ran Micrel, and when we've had to do a layoff, that we gave ample notice. They weren't caught off guard. They knew that this was likely to come, and so it wasn't a big surprise for them. I can't remember anybody that was surprised in a layoff, at least at Micrel. And as a consequence of that, or because of it, they were prepared. And it wasn't a big surprise. Generally, the bitterness comes when there is a surprise, and they are not aware of the layoff. And if you tell them how you made the decision, and what was the metrics that you used to decide it, and how you also computed their severance, most people will understand, because we all face economic crises in our lives, and so people kind of expect it as long as they're treated fairly.
Okay. Now, how often have you had to let somebody go who was in that boat, who didn't really deserve it? I know you were pretty profitable there, so.
I think, as I mentioned just before, about 5 times, I think, over the 37 years, we've had to do a cutback.
And was it done in mass, or was it done individually?
Oh no, we do them individual. I mean, we don't normally just lay off one person. We lay off a group of people, but we don't do it in a group setting. We actually meet with them one-on-one and do it. We don't just say, here's your severance and see you later. We actually sit down, take time with them, help them find, give them opportunities to get their resume written up. We help them with that. We also do a job fair, letting companies come and interview them, and so we do try to help them find another job.
And did you have the experience where people just went ballistic?
We probably did have a few that went ballistic. Not so much because of the layoff, but because of them believing that they were singled out over somebody else. In other words, why didn't you let this other person go? Why me? Kind of thing. So that's been primarily when they've gone ballistic.
Okay, very good. Well, there's a right way, obviously, and there's a wrong way, obviously, and it sounds like you always chose the right way.
That's part of the way we do business at Micrel. Is people are so important, and we have to realize that when you lay off a person, you're not just impacting that individual. You're impacting their family, their people they do business with. A lot of people are impacted by a layoff or by a termination. So you have to do this very, very carefully and with very much consideration for the individual. So with Micrel, the employees were all important. In fact, I used to tell my people that they are more important than our customers, and that's because I know that a lot of companies promote customers are number one, and we believe that in a general sense, but really the employees are number one. And if you don't treat them right, you don't have a good company.
Very good. Okay, well, that wraps up this weekly session, and I will speak to you next week. I hope you have a great week, Ray.
Well, hey, thanks, Rich.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.